some very early in the morning with just one cup of coffee and needing some more, and also some in the late afternoon. Thank you so much for being with us, for making the time in your busy schedule to be with us today. My name is Sally Yacoub. I'm a gender expert, and I've had the pleasure of partnering with IPC, the consultancy firm, along with the Investment Climate Reform Facility, ICR, in this important project. Maybe allow me to give you just a very brief background on ICR and the project, and then go to some housekeeping items before we proceed forward, and introduce also our esteemed panelists, keynote speakers, and then proceed with today's event. So as you may be aware, the Investment Climate Reform Facility, ICR, is co-funded by the European Union, the Organization of African, Caribbean and Pacific States, OACPS, under the 11th European Development Fund, EDF, together with the German Federal Ministry for Economic Cooperation and Development, BMZ, and the British Council. It is in fact implemented by the GIZ, the British Council, Expertise France, and SNV. Among other things, the ICR facility provides technical assistance to national and sub-regional development finance institutions, DFIs, in the African, Caribbean, and the Pacific countries. The aim is to foster capacities and to make those institutions stronger, but also to implement and prepare projects that have a high development impact, particularly in the area of women's economic empowerment and gender lens investing. This project has been commissioned by the ICR facility, and in this project the aim was to identify national and sub-regional DFIs in the African, Caribbean, and the Pacific region that are active in the area of gender lens investing and women's economic empowerment, and from there to showcase best practices when it comes to promoting gender equality and women's economic empowerment, gender responsive finance and women's economic empowerment. But we didn't want to stop only the rosy picture, the nicer stories. We also wanted to hear about the challenges and the gaps in this journey, and also the support that they might be needing in this process. So today I'm very pleased to be able to share with you together collectively as a team the findings of this research and study along with ICR and our panelists, as well as our funders as well here. And this webinar will be focusing on the Pacific and the Caribbean region. There will be another webinar that will be focusing on the Africa region that will take place on the 12th of May. Through those two webinars, as well as the study, we're hoping that this will promote also, peer-to-peer learning between the different institutions, and to share sort of what has worked, also the struggles in the process, and hopefully to also continue the dialogue on this important topic. I am very pleased and honored to be able to showcase two DFIs in the Pacific and the Caribbean, the Federated States of Micronesia Development Bank, FSMDB, and the Caribbean Development Bank, as well, CDB. I'll also, before I go to presenting our esteemed panelists, as well keynote speakers and funders, I'll go through some just very few housekeeping items. We will have a Q&A session, questions and answers session, at the end of the discussion. So after keynote speaking, there will be a discussion with our panelists, and then there will be a Q&A session. And we would kindly ask that you can also put your questions in the questions, within the chat at the questions function, and we'll be able to manage them accordingly. The study, the recording, as well as the link to the study, as well as the PowerPoint presentations, will be made available after the webinar. And the ICR facility will be also announcing that towards the end. Lastly, towards the very end, there will be a very, very short survey that would take literally 40 seconds of your time. And I would be very, very grateful for your feedback. It is truly, we want to hear from you, and it is quite important for us to hear your opinion about the webinar. Without further ado, I think allow me to maybe present our panelists and keynote speakers. Please, thank you so much. So for opening remarks, we have Escipión Oliveira Gomez, Assistant Secretary General, Structure, Economic Transformation and Trade from the Organization of African, Caribbean and Pacific States, OACPS. And we have Erja as well, Askola, Deputy Head of the EU Delegation for the Pacific. I understand that there might be some connection issues as well, so we'll see how that works as well. For closing remarks, we have Yasmine, Galloul and Sarah Weiß from the ICR Facility. As for our esteemed panelists as well, we have Anna Mendiola, President and CEO of the Federated States of Micronesia Development Bank, FSMDB, and we have Jessica Harris, Gender Specialist from the Caribbean Development Bank. So without further ado, I'll pass the word to Mr. Oliveira for your opening remarks, please.
Bula, buenas tardes. Hello, bonjour. We're really proud to be here today with all of you. I am really happy to be with Micronesia and CDB. I am also an island person. I am from the Dominican Republic, so I am very happy to be here with you today. I would say trying to promote development. For those that do not know what the OACPS is, we are the Organization of African, Caribbean and Pacific States. We were created in 1975 via the Georgetown Agreement, Georgetown, Guyana. So it's a very much a Caribbean, Pacific and African institution. We group 79 states from these countries, and our raison d'etre is really to promote sustainable development, to reduce and eventually eradicate poverty, and help our countries to integrate themselves into the world economy. And all of this consistent with the Sustainable Development Goals. We are ably led by Mr. George Rebelo Pinto Chicote, our Secretary General. He's from Angola, who sends his best regards. And my boss is particularly keen in gender balance. In fact, his team is consistent of 3 ladies and 3 men. I would say 3 beautiful ladies and 3 old men, that including himself. And when he chose his management, he really thought he insisted on this. As you might know, the promotion of youth and women is at the center of everything that the OACPS does, because we do consider that the future. We are currently, ICR, the Investment Climate Facility, is part of, I would say, of the structures that were put in place by the European Union and the OACPS to promote the private sector. We have around 600 million euros dedicated to private sector development, and these are implemented through partners, in this case, GIZ, British Council, Expertise Friends, and CNV. That would mean basically Germany, the UK, France, and the Netherlands. So we're very happy to have all these countries supporting us. And the way that we work is that we work at the macro level, basically what ICR does, promoting better ways, promoting public-private sector dialogue, and putting the framework to allow companies to prosper. We also work at the meso level, basically assisting intermediary organizations and banks, in this case, our banks are from CDB and Micronesia, in trying to create knowledge, but also share knowledge, because we do have a lot of expertise in our countries that we often don't recognize. So it's very interesting today, this debate. We also support directly enterprises, sometimes through grants, sometimes through direct assistance, but we cannot help every single company in our universe. So we count on you, on the different institutions and banks to assist them. And the 4th pillar is funding. Basically, we have a series of instruments that are managed through the European Development Finance institutions, through the European Investment Bank, and also for the Caribbean through the Inter-American Development Bank, in order to supply funds for our people. When I've worked a lot in SME development for many years. And when we ask micro, small, and medium-sized enterprises, what is the main need? In fact, today we had another event in the Pacific. In fact, it was 7 in the morning here. And we had a debate with Cole ACP on agriculture. And what the Pacific company said is what they needed most was funding, then they needed funding, and then they needed funding. They needed also not any, they want accessible funding that also, especially for agricultural people, that is long-term, that has conditions, and that collateral, especially when we will talk for some, especially in Africa, collateral for women is a major issue. Not necessarily in the Caribbean where I'm from. So I'm very, very proud to be part of this discussion today, and we hope that we can use what we learned today to promote more development and more interaction. A dream that we have at the OACPS is trying to have a technical group of development banks working together, promoting South-South cooperation, also with our friends from the North is also important, but especially exchanging experiences among ourselves. I really wanted to thank the GIZ team, or the ICR team, sorry, and our colleagues. Sarah Weiß is here today. We also have Yasmine Galloul, and of course Stephanie Khan, which is the overall manager. We feel comfortable working very much with GIZ, and we want to honor as well a relationship with the European Union. The OACPS group was created in 1975, but with the support of the European Union, we have really come a long way, and we would like to continue that relationship, the special relationship that unites us. So I just wanted to say, Vina Kabakalevu, Fafetai, thank you, gracias, merci, thank you. So at your service at the OACPS.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Mr. Oliveira. I think it will next we'll have also Miss Shalshini Prasad from the European delegation for the Pacific for also opening remarks on behalf of Miss Erja Askola.
Hello, I'm here. This is Erja. I'm here, but I don't see myself on the screen. I see all you guys. Hello, Escipión. Very nice to see you. Buenas tardes, Bula from Fiji.
So happy that you will be here today.
Yes, I know Escipión from different contexts, in the Caribbean context, and we have both moved forward now. So I'm here in the Pacific, you are there in Brussels. So we switched a little bit the kind of regional locations that we are in. Well, anyway, thank you very much for inviting me to deliver the opening remarks in this training. Apologies that I cannot make my face visible to you, but at least you can hear me. I want to welcome all the participants, the national and sub-regional development finance institutions in the African, Caribbean, and Pacific countries. It is good that now we can all join virtually. The world is small. Africa, Caribbean, Pacific, you know, coming together like this, it's quite amazing. And people also from Brussels to be able to connect with us, and we can talk and we can exchange and we can make the world, this world, a better place, right? I want to also thank the Investment Climate Reform Facility team for organizing this webinar. And I'm pleased to deliver these opening remarks, not only as a woman, but also as I'm a big believer in the values that we promote in the European Union, and especially big believer in gender equality. As you know, gender equality and women's economic independence and empowerment, they are a very, very strong part of the European Union's agenda. And the EU has last year issued a 5-year strategy for 2020-2025, which underlines the importance of gender equality for achieving an economy that works for people. And this includes, obviously, female representation and involvement in the financial environment. Women tend to be associated with long-term and patient capital and more social impact investment. What I see in the world, not only in Europe, but also here in the Pacific, that actually women's wealth is on the rise and represents a huge economic opportunity to accelerate change. And this change will bring us towards a more diverse and sustainable financial system. There is already evidence that women entrepreneurs are missing out on funding all over the world. And on the basis of current trends, it will take more than 200 years to close this gap in economic participation and opportunity. Let me congratulate the ICR Facility for the study. This is it clearly sets forth sets forth the evidence and also the recommendations that what we would need to be doing in the years and decades to come to close this gap and make things better in this respect. So I'm sure that development finance institutions that are present here can play an important role in supporting gender equality. That is obvious. They can provide finance to small and medium enterprises and other private businesses that have a development impact. They can also, help in addressing the response to the pandemic and also step in to help businesses survive in these different and difficult challenging conditions that businesses are really struggling today. I do think that when women and girls get the opportunity to improve their lives, we all benefit. Poverty falls, economies prosper, and children are healthier. And when we invest in gender equality, it makes not only sense for women, but also to their families and communities. And let me take a good example. I always brag around about my country of origin, which is Finland. Finland in the north of Europe. Very far away from here, from the Pacific, but there I've seen, I've lived through that. I've seen it in my own eyes, and I felt it. What it's like to live in an egalitarian society where the representation of women is ensured at all levels. When our current prime minister is 36-year-old female. And there are several other young women in the government, so they have a strong role in the society. And I think one of the big impacts that has had throughout the decades is that society works well. No one is left behind. Finland is a safe country. I'm not displaying Finland as a model for everybody, not that, but I'm just to make the point that things have not always been this way, but now they are, and it takes decades, it takes even centuries to improve in this area, but progress happens, and we are seeing progress in all parts of the world, including here in the Pacific. And I'm sure that many development finance institutions that are present in this webinar are vocal about their commitment to gender equality as well, and women's empowerment in general. Many are already supporting pooled funds, special initiatives, and communities in practice. So this is a very good and important input in this huge challenge that we have in front of us. And I hope that through this webinar we can contribute to this noble cause, and this webinar could help DFIs to accelerate this progress in narrowing gender gaps and benefit women and girls. The youth is always an important part of all our action. The youth, that's where the future lies on our youth and the way they will be in their at later stages in their lives developing the society. So change really starts at the dinner table at home with our youth. I strongly believe that. I have a teenager myself at home, so who is looking at me now. I'm in Nandi in a hotel, unfortunately, doing teleworking from here. So I'm confined in a small hotel room. I cannot escape these kind of sights from my teenager. Well, anyway, I'm sure that this webinar will be a good platform to showcase the good practices and also to highlight the challenges, so that we can have a dialogue within and across the ACP region, and so we can exchange ideas about the approaches to gender finance and how to facilitate women's empowerment. This is all the more important now in the COVID-19 recovery phase, where also women have been disproportionately affected by this pandemic. And all its consequences. Well, I will end here. I could talk forever on these important issues, but I would really wish all the participants a very fruitful webinar. And Shalesni Prasad will be with you throughout. So if you have any questions, please don't hesitate to ask her. And I trust that you will be engaging with her in any case throughout this training and also in the future. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Ms. Askola. Appreciate it very much. Appreciate it very much. Thank you very much also for taking the time in the hotel room as well with the and hello to your son as well, your teenager. Assumed. We'll move now to give you a bit of a flavor of some of the trends that we've seen from the research on trends in gender finance. And I cannot agree more with Ms. Askola about the importance of the role of DFIs in promoting women's economic empowerment and gender equality, and the importance of that on, generally speaking, on our economies, that our economies would be really better for everyone, particularly with COVID. I think one of the key triggers, I think, for this, many multilateral DFIs have visibility on what they do when it comes to gender responsive finance and women's economic empowerment. If you were to do a quick research, you'll find a lot of researchers popping up on what multilateral DFIs are doing. When you try and do the same for national and sub-regional, you find a lot less visibility on what they do. And so that goes back to the purpose of our study, and it is to basically identify, like I mentioned, identify DFIs that are active in this national and sub-regional DFIs that are active in this space, showcase their best practices as well as their challenges. And maybe I will take a second just to mention what is gender responsive finance and women's economic empowerment, and that could be a very broad term that could range from things that are internally facing initiatives, like, for example, developing a gender policy or promoting gender responsive human resources practices and policies. But it doesn't have to be also internal. It can be also client facing initiatives and projects related to, for example, offering products and services that are gender responsive. So these are some of the key, objectives of our research. And with this webinar, as we said, was to do like this peer-to-peer learning and spark this dialogue. On methodology, just a second on methodology, it was based on qualitative research, so desk review as well as stakeholder interviews with, for example, associations of DFIs, but also experts in this space, along with, of course, mainly interviews with DFIs from a large pool of DFIs in this African, Caribbean, and the Pacific region. And we try to zoom in to find those that are active and to showcase the best practices accordingly. Next slide, please. I would say maybe think next again to the trends, please, dear. To the next one. Yes, again, next, please. And next to the next slide, please. Thank you so much. And next slide, please. Yes. So one of the key trends that we've seen was, while it's gaining traction, gender finance and women's economic empowerment is not yet a priority for many DFIs. You will see some that are still starting, some are still considering, but in terms of having, you know, a solid, you know, solid initiative, solid policy, as well as strategy, it's still yet in you know, not yet a priority. That said, next, please. That said, I would say that the topic is gaining traction. So we've seen from regional associations as well as with DFIs that this topic is becoming more and more important. It's being put on the agenda. So regional associations are convening events on the topic. DFIs are seeking information about it as well as are interested in the topic. So this is great news. Next point, please. That said, there is a disconnect between the awareness of the importance of gender responsive finance and women's economic empowerment, like we were just mentioning, GDP. Women are very, you know, they pay very well. They are the best clients we could have. To really actions and thorough strategy and a systemic sort of way of promoting gender responsive finance. Many DFIs are struggling. Where do we begin? How do we understand this important segment, particularly that the majority of women entrepreneurs are in the informal sector? So the understanding, an in-depth understanding of the profile of those women and the realities, the aspirations, the challenges that they are facing, as well as their financial and non-financial needs, is still not fully, you know, grasped by DFIs. And consequently, tailoring products and services to the needs of this segment is not yet there. In some cases, you will see, even because of the lack of understanding of this segment, there are products that are offered just not based on the in-depth understanding, and the uptake becomes not great because it's not really matching. So I think this is one key finding that we've seen. There, I must say that COVID also, the impact of COVID and how DFIs can play a role in supporting women entrepreneurs in general, and particularly after COVID, was a question that was repeatedly popped up. The business case, maybe I should mention here, the underlying thing here is the lack of understanding of the business case. And why is it important to understand the business case for gender responsive finance? Because without it, it is difficult for DFIs to justify the investments they will put in, the efforts and the research and the efforts to do sort of the product development and design and so on, to offer this to this important segment without having this business case. Next point, please. So the key triggers, we've seen the key triggers and motivations. I would say they really vary. Some have noted differentiation in the market. Some have noted development impact as a key driver for them in promoting, you know, gender. Others have noted the government priorities, when government priorities have gender as part of it. But the majority, I must say that it was donor driven. I think donor requirements are a key driver in this. Next slide, please. Linked to that is the role of multilateral banks and other financing DFIs in influencing national and sub-regional DFIs to adopt gender policies and to take further action. So we've seen, of course, the driver to contribute to SDGs and also other initiatives like the 2X Challenge have been sort of a key motivation. But also we've seen many other multilateral banks like the Asian Development Bank, Inter-American Development Bank, as well as the Global Climate Fund, as well as the Green Climate Fund, and the Global Environment Facility. They are putting more and more requirements for their accreditations and to receive funding that has some gender aspects to it. And gender requirements could be ranging from anything to from conducting a gender assessment, to having a gender policy or an action plan, to reporting sex disaggregated data, or maybe even to earmarking a percentage of the financing going to this important segment. We've seen also regional DFIs like the Caribbean Development Bank providing support to member states as well, member countries, where they are providing support to DFIs in their journey for promoting gender responsive finance, and we're happy as well that they're here. Next point, please. At the DFI level, I would say that seeing that the link between the development of the policy itself and the implementation, that link is quite critical, but is often missing. And it is understandable. Leadership is under so much pressure and multiple demands, on their commitments as well as on the resources. We've seen internal capacities on gender and internal expertise on gender maybe lagging a bit in some DFIs, and this is really a barrier. We've seen that in many cases when donors' requirements are there on gender, there would be an external consultant that is hired to conduct this, assessment and maybe develop this strategy or a policy, for example, to have it in place. But then, with lack of internal resources and capacities, it sometimes often stops here, and sometimes even not communicated about within the DFI stream. So what we have seen as a real trend was that gender initiatives are under-resourced, and under-resourced from a human aspect as well as from a financial aspect, very chronically under-resourced. So expertise on gender, but also financial resources for implementing those gender initiatives. Next point, please. I would say the combination of a progressive national government gender policy, in the case when it is progressive, as well as an effective linkage between the DFI and policymakers, can be catalytic in cases when the countries have national, progressive gender policies. In some cases, we've seen this link is not the same across the board, and even when they're in some cases, actually DFIs are much ahead of the far ahead from the country policies as well. Next point, please. I would say sex desegregated data, not only sex desegregated data, gender responsive monitoring and evaluation was a key challenge and a gap that was repeatedly mentioned at the different levels, at the regional level, national level, and DFI level. This was something that was very clear as a trend, and the ability to systematically collect, which hinders the ability to systematically collect and analyze and report on quality data when it comes to gender responsive finance. And so how do we assess our impact as a DFI at the national level, at the regional level, is a really key bottleneck. And many DFIs have asked for tools, maybe also at the national levels, needing for standardized indicators as well as format for reporting as well. Next point, please. And I think this was the last one, which will be the bridge for our next session. And I would say that DFIs do adopt with what we're seeing, that there are different starting points and different approaches when it comes to gender lens investing and women's economic empowerment. And we've seen that, you'll see it from the showcase of the cases of today, as well as in the study as well. There are different approaches, different starting points, and I'm very happy to move on to the most interesting part with our esteemed panelists as well. Thank you so much for listening, and maybe I'll just give a brief background on our esteemed speakers. So we have Anna Mendiola, the President and CEO of the Federated States of Micronesia Development Bank. Anna has been the President and Chief Executive Officer since March 2001. Prior to her appointment, she has served on the position of Chief Financial Officer for 1 year at the Development Bank. From 1986 to 2000, she has had various high-level positions with the FSM National and Pompi State Government, ranging from the Assistant Secretary for International Development Finance to Director of Treasury and Administration. She has worked for the Asian Development Bank as well as an assistant to the executive director of the Australian constituency for 2 years. She's also served as a board member to various national and state-owned corporations. She's currently serving on the Bank of FSM board of directors, as well as FSM Telecommunication Cable Corporation. She's also on the board member in other associations like the Association of Development Finance Institutions in Asia and Pacific, among others. She holds a master's degree in business administration from California Coast University and a bachelor's degree in business economics from the Eastern Oregon University. She's also FI 360 accredited investment fiduciary. I'm also very pleased to introduce Jessica Harris, gender specialist from the Caribbean Development Bank. Jessica holds a master's degree in gender and development from the Institute of Social Studies in The Hague, Netherlands. She is a gender and development expert with over 15 years of professional experience in research, analysis, and rigorous development in gender and social inclusion, as well as in gender policy at international level in over 25 countries, and more particularly in the Caribbean region, Central and South America, also Africa. Jessica has been working as a gender specialist at CDB since August 2020. She has been assigned to integrating gender equality aspects within capital projects for infrastructures, but also has worked with many various operations teams within CDB and supporting board member countries by providing technical advice on projects, you know, in the design, implementation, monitoring, and assessing impact as well. Jessica also worked provided technical support for a USAID regional office in the Dominican Republic for 2 years, and you know, published reports as well as gender analysis for 13 countries. Worked for the AFDB as well, and supported technical teams for the Joint African Index, Gender Index with the United Nations Economic Commission for Africa, and the Gender Scorecard with the African Union Commission. I'm very pleased you're here, and thank you for your time in sharing with us your inputs, not only today, that started from the interviews time, and then from the preparation and participation in today. Without further ado, I'd like to move on to our first question to our panelists, and maybe I'll start by asking what your respective DFI's approach. What was the approach that your DFI has adopted in promoting gender responsive financing and women's economic empowerment? And maybe at the onset, you can also, if possible, please to provide a very brief description of what your DFI does for the audience purpose. Maybe I'll start with Anna, please, and then Jessica.
Thank you, Sally. It's my pleasure to be part of this discussion. I have a lot to learn, you know, from the gender specialist, as you probably noticed from our interview, but I'll do my best. The Development Bank was created by the FSM Congress in 1979 to help promote businesses, you know, in the private sector. And it was corporatized in 1994 to function as a semi-independent corporation of the government. And it's basically funding business startups in the beginning, and then promoting them to be transferred over to the commercial bank. But in later years, we've introduced home loans and also introduced consumer lending. So aside from businesses, we are doing that, and we've introduced the micro and small lending program. But anyway, in terms of how we start with gender, you know, we took it for granted that nothing in our policies prohibit women from borrowing. But like you say, the uptake is not good. We were running at 37% lending to women, but then maybe our statistics is wrong because we only consider women if they are the primary borrower. We don't consider, you know, the sole proprietors where husband and wives are both borrowers. But anyway, so I've been here for a long time, but in 2017, we decided to introduce gender policy so we can actually focus on providing some assistance to women. We hired more female loan officers because women, especially those in the informal sector, you know, they feel more comfortable discussing their proposals with women loan officers. And then we simplify the application for startup businesses, especially the small ones, like eliminating the submission of a business plan. You know, we work with them to discuss what their business plans are, and then help them with their applications. We also eliminate the requirement to have land as security for small loans, $10,000 and below. And then we also would use the secure transaction website that was introduced by the government, where we can register movable securities, which is a lot easier for most of the women. And then we provide training, basic bookkeeping, marketing, how do you market your products. So this is how we were trying to move there. But as you can see, I still don't have a gender specialist. Like Jessica, it would have been good. So maybe that's something to look forward to in the future. So I'll stop here for the first question and turn it over to Jessica.
Thank you, Anna. Thank you so much. And Jessica, please, over to you.
Yes, thank you so much, everyone. Thanks, Anna and Sally. Just to give you a quick overview, the Caribbean Development Bank is a multilateral financial institution dedicated to assisting Caribbean nations to achieve sustainable long-term economic growth and development. And our headquarters is based in Barbados, and we serve regional borrowing member countries, really helping our borrowing member countries reduce inequality and have the incidence of extreme poverty by 2025 through supporting inclusive, sustainable growth and promoting good governance. And just to say that our mission is reducing poverty and transforming lives through sustainable, resilient, and inclusive development. And really for CDB, investing in women's economic empowerment is key to achieving the Sustainable Development Goals. And we really view it as a direct path towards gender equality, poverty eradication, and inclusive economic growth. In terms of our approach to promoting gender responsive financing and women's economic empowerment, we do have a new, a policy from 2019, a gender policy and operational strategy, but more importantly, a gender equality action plan. So we really have a multi-pronged approach to enhance gender equality internally and externally with our borrowing member countries. We have been working hard on our gender and diversity training for staff and stakeholders. We've been providing gender training to financial providers. Just to note that one of our key strategic pillars is on economic empowerment for all, and that we have a target that 80% of our projects will be gender mainstream by 2024. And to note that most of our projects include gender mainstreaming capacity building interventions, which I will be talking about. Most of our projects we build in technical assistance, so I will be highlighting the DFIs Engage in Gender Equality project later on with the other questions. But really, CDB's been really working to strengthen gender responsiveness in the cultural and creative industries with grants and technical assistance. We've been supporting women in technology for tech startups, a real focus on women entrepreneurs, capacity building for women-led MSMEs in the export sectors, capacity building on access to markets. I'll end there.
This is wonderful. Thank you so much, Jessica, Anna. Maybe I would at some point I would like to also ask you, Jessica, about the M&E and some of the targets, because this was a question that came up with many DFIs on this topic, and maybe the gender markers. If at some point you can, it would be great to touch on. Maybe my second question was on what would you say your organization's key accomplishments are in that regard. What are you proud of, and what are the key success factors in that? I mean, it can be. We are all on a learning journey. We're all on a path. So it always, and we know it's not struggle free, it's not challenge free. We all know that. So it's just depending on the timing. It's just a cycle, if you will. I'd start maybe Jessica. Would start with you and then with Anna after. What would you say have been your accomplishments, success factors? Yeah, there.
Well, I would say I wanted to highlight our engagement with DFIs. So we provided technical assistance for 3 DFIs in Jamaica, Belize, and St. Lucia to develop gender equality policies and action plans. So that would be a key accomplishment. I would also say we've been successful in really building awareness. Like you were saying, Sally, at the beginning about building the business case for gender mainstreaming. We've also had success engaging with men in communities. For example, in Belize, with Mayan women with the cultural and creative industries, one of the key success factors was engaging with the men in the communities. Also, we've done a lot of training of credit officers, also developed financial products that target women, loans and grants for women's economic empowerment. But I would say that one of the key accomplishments has been stakeholder engagement. So really bringing the national stakeholders together, and then having regional knowledge exchange, or DFI to DFI, or regional knowledge exchange. And then essentially with the development of the gender equality policies and action plans, it's really become part of the institutional policies. So for gender mainstreaming within DFIs, and really shows their commitment and and buy-in. Yeah, that's it in a nutshell. Sorry, I could talk forever.
Yes.
No. It's wonderful. It's wonderful. We'll have more to come. No worries.
Yes.
No worries.
You know,
And it's wonderful to.
Yeah,
Please,
just
Anna.
for being a gender expert, you know, you can teach us all how to deal with this. But you know, for the FSM, since this is a national development bank, I would say our accomplishment was actually just recently in 2020, where with the assistance of, you know, Asian Development Bank, you know, providing resources to help us establish a micro and small loan program. And, you know, because of, like Sally said, with requirements, we were able to increase the percentage of women to 57% in the uptake of this small loan program. And, you know, the attractiveness of it is the easy term, the low interest, which is much lower than our usual lending rate. And also they were provided interest subsidy for 2 years. And so it enables women to come in. You know, women here are normally scared of borrowing. You know, financing is something scary. What if their businesses fail and they couldn't pay back the money? But with this easy program, you know, we introduce it, train them how to apply for a business license, how to file your taxes, how to use financing in general, you know, to make sure your business grows so you can move from the informal sector to the formal sector. So I think this program is actually a success, and because we're so happy that we were able to receive resources, we've converted into a revolving fund so we can continue instead of just a one-off funding from the Asian Development Bank. And we hope that in the future, we can continue to secure funding. I'll talk about the challenges when we get there. So I'll stop here for now. Thank you.
Thank you. And I've also recalled that most of your branch managers were women as well, which is so internal diversity is something that I would say you've yeah, I mean,
Yes, internally, there are more women in the office in the development bank than men. We have 25 women and 13 men. And all the branch managers in our other island groups are women. And it helps understanding women's, their needs, their concerns.
absolutely.
We're no
Absolutely.
expert though.
Nobody's an expert, even if they tell you so. So, so super. Thank you so much. Maybe to the next questions, and to Anna as well. We start with you. The key challenges. Where are the bottlenecks? Where do you see?
Well, the key challenges are really from the fact that there is no government-wide gender policy that is inclusive and a requirement for all the different government agencies to follow. We created our own gender policy because we see the need to have it in order to move forward, especially with seeking funding from abroad. Since we can't raise funding locally, we're always looking outside for resources. Now, the challenges we also have is like we don't really have the, not only the technical support, but in terms of human resources, like we have to learn on our own, but we don't have a specific program that really tailored to gender. We think we understand what the gender issues are, but we don't. We base it on assumptions like, oh, everything is good here. Women have access, they should come. Women can own land here, but there are a lot of constraints that we as a national development bank don't have the capacity to really focus. So we do what we could. And also has a constraint, when we were trying to introduce the gender policy, we encountered difficulty because our male colleagues thought, why have a gender policy? Everything is just fine, do you really have to have a policy on the books dealing with gender? And so we had to compromise on some level, like on the rationale for having, because we say women were marginalized and not given access. They don't like those wordings. So we compromise in order to have a gender policy to enable us to at least start looking into ways to really provide gender focused assistance instead of just saying, okay, it's available. But so it, and then also the challenge we face is really trying to work with the community to bring the women in, come in and do this. We really need to show them and convince them that this program will help them in the long run. And so I guess I would say awareness is still a challenge for us, and that's something we need to continue doing. And if we could find assistance from the gender people, we're starting to collaborate with the gender focused organizations, even the women group, to see how we can better serve women instead of just saying we're here for you. We've got a lot to learn. So those are the challenges internally as well as, country-wise. We've got a long way to go.
We all do. The world, the entire world. If it's a process, and managing your internal front, so internal challenges, and also certain resistances, but also external contextual factors that you have no, full control over. So, thank you so much. We all have a long way to go. Jessica, over to you.
Yes, thanks, Anna. I think, yeah, you've highlighted many of the similar challenges, how institutional capacity is an issue, financial literacy. Some of my colleagues found that some of the managers within the banks can be gender blind. To give an example, not really understanding how, you know, the double burden of female professionals and business owners. So you may have to build in, you know, childcare, but to do that, you need a budget, right? So, so similar to what Anna was saying, the lack of property or land ownership to use as collateral, and really the deeply embedded social and cultural norms. You know, we need to do this, you know, continuously building the awareness. It's not just one workshop that necessarily will lead to systemic change, you know, but and then also a challenge that often, you know, for women's participation, because in some countries between 25 and 40% are female-headed households. So really, how do we get the women to participate if they don't have any childcare, for example? So, and then really another challenge has been there's little data on how other factors intersect with gender to generate inequalities. And that's all from my end. Thanks.
This is wonderful, and yeah, resonating to what we all like, the job that we all have to sort of contribute to, like norms and deeply rooted issues, unpaid care work, and I mean that are, you know, again, contextual factors that we have no direct you know, influence on, but we can be also responsive to those as well. Maybe my next question is my next question on going forward on your plans. What is your what do you see as next steps? You know, Anna, and where do you see also, you know, your plans and yeah, your vision for?
Well, definitely, Sally, we need to move forward and we need to develop something. I mean, we already have the program, but we still need to implement a policy. We have a good policy, but there is not enough mechanism to implement it. And the way going forward, we have a constraint I did not mention, which is the lack of data in terms of women-headed household. Our census is very outdated here in the FSM, so it really makes it difficult for us to come up with a very responsive financing. But I know that's something we need to put in place. But at least continuing the program we've started, although we've eliminated some of the features, because we felt that by educating those who are inside already are capable to move forward with our regular program. But continuing to look at that, we included in our new positions a gender specialist, which is already approved by the board, but it's not funded yet. So at least going forward, we know we want to have someone who could help us really focus on how to develop our program so we can be more helpful to our female population, so they can be more productive. So, you know, I was happy to hear Jessica mention transforming lives, because of the things that we've changed in our work. We used to have our customer value proposition used to be your partner in business, but you know, it sounds so masculine. And then we recently had a retreat and everybody felt like we should change it to transforming lives. We've made a lot of changes and provided a lot of different financial assistance that also focus on women's need, especially in our consumer lending and home loan program. We made it in such a way that it will be accessible to women and finance them. A lot of them actually come to our consumer lending for some of their small projects, but then that's a higher cost program, and that the benefit of the micro and small loans. So going forward, we're looking at transforming lives as our customer value proposition, and include that in terms of our mission and our vision. Thank you, Sally. I'll end here and listen to Jessica.
Absolutely. Jessica, please.
I think going forward, as mentioned, we had the 3 DFIs that we supported with the gender policies and action plans. So we're hoping that this is going to inspire other DFIs in the region and to foster this DFI to DFI knowledge exchange and more regional knowledge. I think really just working on deepening understanding of inequalities and really the unmet needs for financial services of all different excluded groups. There's really a need for further research of the region's population, and are there subgroups that are not represented in loans and activity portfolio, and understanding why. CDB will continue and increase access to productive resources, financial services, education, and business support. And I think really going forward, we really need to continue to build partnerships and learning for gender mainstreaming, and continue with technical assistance for business development, and really try and increase the number of loans to women borrowers and also the size of the loans. And as I mentioned earlier, looking at alleviating family responsibility so women can dedicate themselves to business and professional development, and really increase access to business support services and resources, and just really continue supporting our development partners to mainstream gender into their operations, focus on business capacity development, youth enterprises, financial literacy, and introducing alternative collateral requirements.
Fantastic. You've maybe also for Anna, you had mentioned to me that you were looking at also the impact, assessing the impact of, for example, financing on women's employment, livelihoods, and so on, as an area that you were looking forward to sort of going, going forward. But also for you, Jessica, like you were also noting, gender responsive procurement, budgeting, climate finance as well, as well as your work on trade that you're hoping also, which triangulates multiple aspects, which is nice as always with an issue of gender responsive finance. It's not only the financing that's needed, but like both of you were mentioning, the business development and non-financial services that are provided, and in some cases also access to markets that is so much needed, particularly after COVID. So this is wonderful. Maybe I'll ask about your lessons learned in this journey. Maybe after that I'll ask some words of wisdom to other DFIs who are considering going down the same path. So first, lessons learned from your end, maybe.
Yes, thank you, Sally and Jessica. Lessons learned is that having a policy on the book is not enough. You have to put some teeth to it, if we're really committed to gender mainstreaming in our project, we need to put in special programs, and we need to pay attention to all the businesses we finance to make sure that it's also creating employment for women. It's something we do in terms of our impact analysis that you alluded to, on how the businesses we finance actually help women, not only themselves as a business owner, but as an employee. With the pandemic, most of the people who lost job were women, because our border has been closed 2.5 years. And so it has affected our tourism sector. people can leave. You can leave the country, but you can't come in. And so a lot of people have migrated away to the US looking for jobs. And so it's creating a lot of burden here. And I'm glad that Jessica mentioned about childcare, because even me and my small family, finding a decent babysitter is really difficult these days. They're all gone to work in the US or in Guam, but it's becoming a pandemic related issue. And so with the program that we have in place, at least they can work from home, you know, run their businesses from home. But if we want to grow them, you know, childcare becomes an issue. And so we've been trying to promote with a group of women on whether they would like to run a take care center. You know, that's something that is will be useful here in the FSM, especially here in Pohnpei, because we're having difficulty with that support. And so those are some of the lessons we've learned. We know that we need to do more outreach in order to get the women comfortable to understand financing, but not only women. We realize that we need to get the men to support the program we're doing. And so they could enable their wives to participate in this program. We also have learned that they need specialized training. They need more assistance than we normally provide. And that's something we plan on doing. And so we're looking at collaborating with a small business development center, as well as the IOM, the International Migration Office. You know, they're also focusing on working with gender issues, ensuring gender equality and empowerment. So there's a lot of work. There's a lot of lessons learned here. We'll continue to learn on this journey.
Absolutely.
Thank you, Sally.
Thank you, Anna, all of us. And maybe just a reminder before we move to Jessica, if you have any questions, you can also put the question in the chat function. I mean, it's if you can put there your questions and also direct it to the correct person if you choose to. Thank you so much, Jessica. Back to you to the lessons learned, and thank you so much, Anna.
Sure, thank you, Anna. So that I have about 6 lessons. It was hard to narrow it down, but I tried. There's a real need to consult with external and internal stakeholders to build your gender policy and action plan. A real need to generate sex disaggregated data to achieve financial inclusion for women entrepreneurs, homeowners, students, and really to show the unaddressed lending gaps, for example, with mortgages for women, education loans for men. There's another lesson was to improve and update screening, marketing, and financial products to better serve women clients. Also, another lesson was to set specific, achievable organizational targets and empower a focal person to animate and hold departments accountable for their performance. Also ensure that human resources, policies, and budgets are aligned with supporting the gender equality policy and action plan. And in terms of broader gender mainstreaming, I really would highlight the need to improve legal and regulatory frameworks and remove the constraints to women's access to capital. And Anna already mentioned how, you know, this need to build policy and action partnerships with allies in key government ministries and agencies, for example, with TVET, housing, youth, industry.
Oh, I'm so glad that this is being recorded because then we can go back to your jewels, both of you, Anna and Jessica. So maybe some of the, my last question was your advice to those who might be going down that, who are considering, and I'm sure you've inspired many, and you will also as we go on other DFIs. What would you your tip, this advice,
Thank you, Sally. I'm sure Jessica would have better advice, but as a national DFI, as I highlighted earlier, it's important to have women credit officers or loan officers, what you call them. But also important is for them to be trained on gender issues. Because just because they're female doesn't mean they understand what the gender issues are. So they need to participate in training that provide guidance on how you target women and how you mainstream gender into your program. Also, as an advice is to provide extra assistance to women applicants. There are people who are not necessarily financially literate, so you need to work with them and understand, because they know their dream, they know what they want to do, they simply don't know how to put it on a piece of paper. So I feel that's something DFI should be doing. Also, as an advice is to reach out. Go out and do outreach in different communities to make people aware of the kinds of assistance that you can provide, and also provide training. We normally provide training and we don't segregate it, it's focused, but we tend to encourage our female clients to come in to attend. But sometimes it's difficult for them to get away from their places to come into town. So that's something we will also be looking at, taking it to their communities. It could be childcare as an issue, and that's why they can't come out. I still think DFIs at the national level should create specific program that target women. In terms of financing. And also what I forgot to mention as a challenge, but as an advice, we need to start looking at climate change issues, especially here in the islands where sea level rise is getting worse and worse. And there will be a lot of specific assistance that women especially would need. Especially if they're the head of their household. They need to find a way to deal with this climate issue. And so those are my advice. When you're developing program, I'm advising myself as well, remember to include climate adaptation and resilience into the program. So that's not only advising my colleagues in the national DFI, but even myself.
Wonderful.
Thank you, Sally and Jessica. I'm learning a lot from listening to Jessica.
Wonderful.
All right,
Thank
thanks
you.
so much, Anna. Yeah, I think I've mentioned it a few times, but just really make the business case for gender mainstreaming. So gender equality policy in your action plan is part of the DFI's organizational strategy. So it's really a tool that presents an institution's commitment to financial inclusion. So really it's about committing to equality of results and the achievement of economic rights. So you can kind of frame it in that way, and really that you're addressing the obstacles faced by women and men and different subgroups to access financial services. And also to highlight that before you develop your gender policy and action plan, that gender-based analysis is really key, so that you can identify the gaps, and part of the DFI organizational strategy, you can identify the key priorities, and really encourage DFIs to engage with senior managers, staff, clients, and key national partners. Don't forget the Sustainable Development Goals. There's Sustainable Development Goal 5 about promoting women's economic empowerment, and I would say leadership and accountability. So when you're developing your gender equality policy and action plan, the roles and responsibilities for implementing the gender equality policy and action plan, needs to be very, very clear. And then, yeah, I mean, with your gender equality policy and action plan, often we don't realize how many strengths a DFI may have that they can build on. So it's really about identifying priority areas for filling those gaps and building on your strengths, and frame it as deepening your understanding of inequalities. Yeah, I think that's all from my.
This is wonderful. Thank you so much, Anna. Thank you so much, Jessica. I'm very pleased to have met you, and also to showcase your work, both of you, today. I think we will have maybe one or maximum two questions, that if at all. We have 12 more minutes, and maybe I see that there's a question about where did the incentive to better serve women customers initially come from in your institutions. So the incentive, where did you see, for both of you, the incentive to serve women customers? And that is both of you.
I will start if I think I understand the question. I believe you highlighted in your research, that some of the DFIs, their gender policies and programs are being required by donors. And I would say that's how we started, because if we needed support, especially to go out looking for funding, and which we've done, gender is always a requirement, because the government didn't require it. So, and that's why we were ahead in terms of dealing with gender issue, because we needed to access resources from outside. And so that was originally the incentive, but then we're realizing that our work becomes more meaningful when we also include the women. It finally, we could provide that kind of assistance, but we learned it from the requirements of the donor community. Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Anna. Jessica.
Yeah, I think, as I was mentioning earlier, once the 3 DFIs that we worked with, but once they did the gender-based analysis, they had a deeper understanding of all the the factors, the specific constraints for women's for their economic empowerment. So I think, to give an example, across all the sectors of the 3 DFIs, they found that female-owned businesses only accounted for 7% of the total value of loans.
Wow.
So, yeah. So, I mean, when you have this kind of data and you didn't realize, yeah, so, and then I think, you know, the awareness around financial inclusion, but also framing it as an opportunity, because there's so many unmet needs of so many different subgroups, you know. So, I mean, so I would frame it as an opportunity, you know. So
This is wonderful. Thank you so much. One last question, if possible as well. The kind of sex desegregated data that would be helpful to you both to tailor your services and products. You've mentioned already household data, but what exactly and what other data that might help you tailor services and product you foresee?
Well, you know, I think what we really need to get is, well, we already mentioned the household data, but also not only the household data, but even internally to us. We need to define what a gender, because like what I mentioned earlier, that the way we're segregating our data is if the primary borrower is a female, then it's a women loan. But if she's a co-borrower to a husband, then it's a male loan. And in my discussion with the gender specialist at Asian Development Bank, we could widen the definition to include even if they are co-borrower, because majority of the businesses here, even if the male is the primary borrower, the business is actually run and managed by the women, their spouses. So we can consider those as a loan. And also, if the business have more women employees, then we can consider it as a, you know, a gender focused business. So if we do that, then it would substantially increase our statistics, at least our lending to women. I guess there are a lot of statistics that are missing, especially from the government side, that could help support what we could develop as a special program for women.
Absolutely. Jessica.
yeah, I mean, we really need the evidence and the data to understand, for example, earning gaps. You know, and as I mentioned, you know, there's little data on how other factors intersect with gender to generate inequalities. So if we want solutions, you know, they need to be designed and they have to be aligned with the specific capacities and the needs of subgroups. So if your data is not disaggregated, at least by sex, hopefully by age, disability, you know, we know that rural versus urban, you know, can also and you know, different communities, and what else, yeah, and then I think, as I highlighted earlier too, that, you know, having the sex disaggregated data really highlights where the gender gaps are. I think I'd mentioned how you know, the number of mortgages for females versus males was really shocking, but then also there was a disparity, a big gender gap for education loans. A lot more education loans were going to young women and not young males. So young males, in fact, are marginalized. It's not always women or young that it, you know, it's gender gaps can also be with the men and the young men as well. So I think it's important to know where the gender gaps, like Anna was saying, so that you can design specific gender specific programming to address those gaps.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I would like to continue for another hour or maybe even two. But I thank you. This is wonderful, very comprehensive, very insightful, inspiring. Maybe I want to give justice also to our ICR, you know, our funder, as well as the, you know, please, Sarah, Yasmine, I turn it over to you for your closing remarks, as well as information about your upcoming events as well. And thank you so much. Thank you, Anna, Jessica, Sarah, over to you. And Yasmine, please. Sorry, Sarah and Yasmine.
Thank you very much. Also to you, Sally, for this very interesting session. And of course, mainly to Jessica and Anna for your insights, for sharing your learnings yeah, inspiring all the participants here. What we would also like to highlight is already in the beginning, there was a brief outline of what the ICR facility does. As mentioned, we are offering tailored technical assistance to development finance institutions, among other types of institutions. We work with public and private institutions broadly on the topic of business environment and investment climate. And going forward, we'll focus especially on the work to promote women economic empowerment and gender lens investing, as mentioned. Could we move to the next slide, please? To do that, and especially for DFIs in the ACP region, we will be launching a call for proposals, which will be launched at the end of June. And it will be serving to select up to 6 banks to receive tailored technical assistance for the period from 2022 to 2025. As said, the focus will be on women economic empowerment and gender lens investing. And as we work demand-based, so we tailor this, or we can tailor the support that we offer really to the needs of your specific institution. We have put a couple of examples here. This is by no means an exclusive list. It's rather meaning to serve as potential ideas or starting points of the discussion. As you can see, the support or the topics covered can be focusing on institutional structures. They can focus on specific products. They can focus on developing gender policies or strategies, or also action plans. As today we heard often, and also Anna highlighted again, it's not enough to have a policy, but they need to be put into action. So this can be a topic. Or we were discussing about the data as well as knowing the customers. So it could also include market research on specific target groups. And or building a business case, this was mentioned also, and developing specific advisory services for the specific target group as well. The call for proposals will be open from June to September. So in case you are interested, please stay tuned. The call will be launched on our website. You'll find the link here. And also, if you could move to the next slide, please. If you're interested on the call as well as beyond for the ICR facility, please stay tuned. You'll find here the link to our website for development finance institutions specifically, including the link to the full study, which Sally mentioned in the beginning. Also, you find here our YouTube channel, where we will also publish the recording of today's webinar. And you can follow us as well on LinkedIn, or get in touch with us through our email address, which you also find here on the website. Also, here with me, as said, is Yasmine and Maya. We are the team from the ICR facility working with development finance institutions, and we very much love to hear from you. Thank you very much. Back over to you, Sally.
Thank you, Sarah. Thank you, Yasmine. And Maya, when you see a small team, you feel, oh yeah, without knowing, you think, okay, it must be a team of 25 people. when you see just the work, the product, and then thank you so much, Sarah. Thank you, Yasmine. Wonderful. Also, the focus on gender responsive financing going forward for you. I really want to thank all of you, for such an enriching, session, for being such really inspiring leaders. We have now, as you will see, projecting the survey. Just if you could respond to the questions, it will take 10 seconds, and we'll flip to just the next questions. There are 4. Yeah. In the meantime, I really want to thank our very wonderful contributors. Maybe I'll wait for a second, just yeah, for those answering as well, for the poll itself, you allow us. Yeah, I think this would be the last one. And thank you so much for taking the time. Super. I think, I'm sorry, we're 2 minutes over time. We'll be done in 1 minute, but I want to truly thank you. I want to thank Anna, Jessica, for being an inspiration of leaders we want more of, with the humility, with the really the courage to go in a pathway that is never easy, but to continue trying and to continue learning. And this is wonderful. Sarah, Yasmine, Maya, the rest of the ICR team, thank you so much for the pleasure of working with you and for the wonderful work you do for the funders, for the EU, for OACPS, for our open remark keynote speakers as well, who also participate in this area, as well as from the OACPS, Mr. Oliveira, for participating and taking part, for all who participated at 11 p.m., 8 a.m., 7 a.m., 6 p.m., and when it's dinner time. And Sarah, I know it's so late, so Faline, for making it possible, all those that I forgot to mention that made today possible. Thank you so much. Have a wonderful evening, day, afternoon, and take good care of yourself.